But we begin with lawmakers advancing bills this week to create Kentucky's own government efficiency efforts. Senate Bill 257 wouldn't exactly mirror the cuts happening under the federal DOGE, but would require annual performance audits of state agencies. State Auditor Allison Ball says this is technically nothing new, and the office already has this power, but by putting it into law, it makes them an annual requirement, with the findings published in a report each year to the governor and Legislative Research Commission. The office would not have the power to make cuts itself.
It's been sort of left to the wayside for the last few administrations, and that's really a matter of resources. There hasn't been the staffing, there hasn't been the funding available to do that kind of work.
That bill passed the Senate Wednesday 32-6. Now over in the House, a committee has advanced H.C.R. 50, creating a discipline of government efficiency, an interim bipartisan committee to examine spending practices and transition to zero-based funding. Representative Watkins, I want to start this segment with you here. What are your thoughts on just this renewed, or I guess increased effort on cutting waste in government?
I think it's always a good idea for government to be responsible with taxpayer dollars, and I come from that perspective because locally I used to work in Louisville Metro government, and I was chief of performance, and I ran the Office of Performance Improvement under a mayoral administration, the previous one in Louisville. So conceptually, I think it's an interesting thing to be responsible with taxpayer dollars. My question is about redundancy. Do we already have it? And if we have the ability to do something similar that the auditor has in different aspects in the sort of legislative review commission, why would we need to sort of duplicate services? I mean, that's actually a part of being efficient, that you don't have redundancy and duplication. So I didn't support the initial favor because I think the skill sets and the what we need legislatively already exists.
Let's bring in Representative Ray here. I saw you're a co-sponsor on H.C.R. 50. To the point that's being made here by Representative Watkins, how would this be a bit different than perhaps your budget review subcommittees that we already have?
It's more eyes on the prize, right? I mean, since we've taken the majority back in 2016, we've made a concerted effort to reduce the individual income tax, and this kind of goes along with that. You know, we don't want to cut government. We want to make sure, we don't want to necessarily cut government. We want to make sure government is working as efficiently as it should be. We want to make sure it's funded the way it should be funded, and we want to make sure that we're not wasting taxpayer dollars on programs that don't have legislative eyes or legislative intent behind it. I do support the idea and the effort. You know, it's something that through the regular budget review process that we're always cognizant of the funding for these programs, but absolutely the more eyes we can put on it, the more transparency we can bring to it. It's an important issue.
What do you think of the particular approach in terms of strategy on either of these two particular proposals? The term witch hunt was brought in committee on H.C.R. 50. You see what's happening at the federal level with some concern about maybe the cuts being too wide with DOGE. How do we replicate that here at the local level where we don't see any unintended consequences?
Well, I mean, I really want it to go through the legislative process. You know, obviously the Republicans don't control the governor's office. We don't have the executive branch, so we don't have the ability to go in and take a super deep dive into a lot of these programs. We rely a lot on the information from them. So that's one of the kind of the shortcomings that I see of doing this legislatively. But certainly through the auditor's office, a report required annually on their findings. I could absolutely see that as a benefit to the Commonwealth.
More you want to add on that, Representative Watkins?
I agree with the legislative process. I think there's some stark differences from what I would see happening in D.C. versus what's happening here. I do think the legislative process and how it's being discussed is quite different from what we're seeing in D.C. As I mentioned, my own professional experience, I was trained. I mean, I have professional certifications in project management and Six Sigma and Lean and such. And we have unelected people who are untrained in D.C. just taking a hatchet to budgets, and it's creating a lot of chaos. I think whiplash was the word used. I would just also note that when we think about I think you mentioned, I think performance-based versus zero-based budgeting is a concept. That is a very difficult thing to do. I know my colleague here has experience running city governments before. That's a very difficult thing to do. And sometimes I think this conversation is getting over-politicized. So whereas the Republicans may think something is not necessarily that we do, I think government is really the only job that people think they can do very well because they stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. You actually have to be trained to know what you're doing. And I would just caution some prudence when we make decisions like this.
Well, we got a little bit less than a minute left in this particular segment here, y'all. As we mentioned at the top, there's two different proposals that are moving right now, Senate Bill 257 and HCR 50. Any thoughts right now on which proposal or both that is likely to move on from here?
Listen, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if both of them ran. You know, President Reagan had said the closest thing we have to eternity on earth is a government program, and that's absolutely a fact. You know, a lot of this stuff has been established for years and years and years, and just having periodic reviews to make sure that they're still accomplishing the mission they were supposed to accomplish when they were set out is a good thing. The accountability to taxpayers is a good thing, and whether we go with a legislative committee or whether the auditor does that, it doesn't really matter to me. I just want to make sure that that's happening here in Kentucky.
Last word on this, Representative Watkins.
Yes, I think I would just ask that we do so with rationality and not rage, and that we choose sort of conscientious efforts over chaos. We cannot, I don't think we were ever elected to be chaotic in our decision making. That translates to people every day, and they're feeling it right now.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there.